I was a debutante years ago at what you might call a Bridgerton style ball. And it wasn't until recently when I rewatched Bridgerton season 4, part 1, which I'm obsessed with, that I was taken back to that moment of opening a ball myself. I kind of watched it on screen and I was taken back to the thrill and the glitter and the excitement and the white dresses and the swirling. And then it hit me that actually I'm not sure how many women today can really feel that moment. I'm not sure how many women out there are familiar with such traditions in the modern day life. I'm not even sure how many of you know that the season actually still exists, guys. It's still out there. So here I am telling you about what modern day Bridgerton looks like from the perspective of a debutante. And I want to give you some insights on the history of where the season is coming from. I'm going to give you some insights into the modern day ton. I want to give you some of the tidbits and gossip. And all of it is going to be surrounding the Austrian ball season. Because, yes, guys, it is true what these people are saying online. You can still go to a ball in Austria. And matter of fact, the last big ball just happened. It's the opera ball. It literally just happened the past week. And it's so funny that Bridgerton is airing and at the same time the opera ball is happening. And I believe the majority of our world is watching Bridgerton, but not knowing about the opera ball. So here I am trying to lend you a hand so you can go to your own ball. Hi there, and welcome to the Mugcast, a cozy listen to pair with your coffee. I'm Hannah, the writer behind Huggin' and Mug and Medium, where I cover everything from music to psychology as a woman living abroad. Here I read my stories aloud with a few fresh reflections and insights along the way, so grab your mug, settle in, and let's get into today's piece. So as mentioned in the quick intro, I'm from Austria, where we still have what I would say is a really alive ball culture. We still have a season, and I honestly didn't realize how rare this was until I sat down to watch Bridgerton. I know that the US, for instance, has proms, but from what I've been told by US friends, it's like a very fancily dressed big party. And a lot of my friends from other countries have been retelling the story of like you graduate and then there's going to be some sort of a ceremony, but rarely is it an actual ball. But in Austria, most girls will have a ball for their graduation, and it depends on their school how ball-y, I guess, how traditionally Bridgerton-esque that ball is, but I'm lucky to say that not only am I a huge nerd who loved her school, but also my school was in an abbey, and my school was in this beautiful historic building, which just lends itself to having a ball. And so I'm, to this day, so proud to say that not only did I go to that school, but I had the ball there, and I had the whole thing of like walking into the room, opening the ball, having a polonaise to dance, like this orchestrated group dance that you would see in Bridgerton or Pride and Prejudice. And I did the waltzing, and honestly, I would do it every single year if I were in Austria for the ball season, which right now I'm in Taiwan, so I don't really get to go see the ball season, but I catch glimpses of it online because recently the opera ball happened, and yeah, ball season is a thing in Austria. It's a standard piece of our culture, as much as music is a very, very standard piece of Austrian culture. And I've written about Austrian culture before and our tie to music, but now I want to dedicate this specifically to the ball season and pointing out to you the differences and similarities to Bridgerton. And how I got inspired to do this, I just want to quickly backtrace to that story. I have a very best friend here in Taiwan, and I recently returned here and moved into a new place. And it just so happened that I would move into my new home on Valentine's Day. And my best friend was helping me with the moving process, which was so generous, so kind, and she's such a lovely human. And we were like, okay, how are we going to make this day special? Like, besides it being Valentine's Day and me moving in, how would we like make this the perfect Galentine's best friend pink day? And she really loves scuderie boards, so we bought a bunch of cookies and stuff and decorated a really pretty scuderie board. And then I was like, you know what? What do girls watch for events like these? We should watch the new season of Bridgerton. So we sit down and we get cozy on my new bed, which also has this like Regency style to it with like a little bit of ornamentation. I turn on the movie and this, again, the ball scene plays and I feel like nostalgic about it. And suddenly my best friend next to me, she's a Filipino, goes, "Oh, could you please turn on the subtitles? Because I don't understand what they're saying." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I was shocked by that because she's basically a native speaker in English. She grew up speaking English, much more so than I did. And I was just, it's natural and logical for her to maybe not have had contact with British accents before, especially not this like Regency style accent. But I was still like shocked because the English that I had learned and the culture that I was in kind of was so much of this traditional British English, and like Regency dresses and Pride and Prejudice was on screen when I grew up because my mom's an English teacher and she loves Britain. So all of that was so familiar for me and also nostalgic in a way. I'm not British, but you know, European culture does share some similarities. And the whole ball thing was very familiar to me. So I just remember she was like, "Yeah, could you please turn on the subtitles? I don't understand what they're saying." And so I'm like a little dazed. I turn on the subtitles, and as I watch the screen now with the subtitles, I go, "Wait, that's crazy." It became this symbol of like me translating my culture for her to understand it. And that was kind of the spark for me writing about this, because I love my life abroad and I love engaging with people from cultures that are very far from mine and learning about where they're coming from. If you've had a listen to my previous article about Bad Bunny, for instance, you would know that I recently fell into Latin culture and I just want to learn about it. I really want to know more about it, and I want to be able to appreciate it and feel the music and enjoy it. And if there's somebody from a Latin culture, I want to be able to talk to them in a way that makes them feel comfortable and familiar, and that gives the two of us something to talk about. I just love going into conversation with somebody being like, "Hey, I know something about your culture. Tell me if this is true or if this is wrong. Explain to me how you see the world." I love to know how people see the world. And I guess this like watching Bridgerton and see it with the subtitles was the first time that I realized, wait, I think I also need to translate my culture for others. It seems to be such a simple thing because it's European culture. Like everybody knows Bridgerton and it seems like such a duh type of thing to do. But then again, maybe there's some things that people don't know yet. And I would so enjoy telling these stories because I want to keep that culture alive too. I want to keep ball season. Guys, I really want to keep it. So this is me trying to, I guess, translate my culture in a little way. Or at the very least, I would like people to click away from this video and think to themselves, "Hey, I didn't know this before. I'm so glad I learned this." Which is why I'm also going to bring some history into this. I'm going to explain to you, where does masquerade balls come from? Where's the season coming from? What about the modern ton? What about the recent balls? All of that. And I'm going to do this. I've already given you some primers, but I'm going to do this in the shape of an article that I've already written just recently. It's on Medium, a writer's platform that I really enjoy and where I hang out most of the time. The article is linked below, and if you want to read along, please, as always, click the link below to see the article. You can also read the article in your own time over there if you don't want me rumbling around along to it. Also, there's a bunch of links that you might want to check out in this article. So for instance, I linked a video for you to see the actual Opera Ball of 2026, which I think is quite interesting. So you can click into my article and then you'll see the video of the 2026 Opera Ball in Vienna and how it was orchestrated. You'll also get a video from the ball that I was a debutante in. I think the video is from 2024, so it's not the ball that I'm not on screen. It's not the exact year that I was dancing in that ball. But again, the ball season is a very repetitive thing and very orchestrated tradition. So the ball that I was in is fairly, very, very, very similar to what you see on screen. I was dancing in the same room. I had the same similar dress, roses in hand, and even the choreography is strikingly similar to what I did. So if you want to see what I did a couple years back, so you can look at that ball. And I also have a little picture there for you to see what a masquerade used to look like in the Austrian Empire historically, which I find very interesting. And there's also a picture of the current Austrian president there, who's talking about the relevance of balls in today's modern society. But this has been a really, 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 really long intro. I'm sorry for having made it that long. I wasn't anticipating it to make it so long, but I think the reason I'm babbling is because I have something special in mind. You see, the article's written like a lady whistled down paper. And so I want to attempt going at this with a Regency era British accent. I know this is going to be embarrassing for me, very embarrassing. I'm merely doing this for other people's enjoyment and entertainment because I want to teach you something, but I also definitely want to make sure that this is fun. So I'm going to try my very freaking best, which also doesn't allow me to swear, by the way. I'm going to try my utmost best to make this a British thing, to make myself a little bit lady whistle down as I write this article, because I knew I was going to record this, and because I recently kind of tapped into voice acting. I have literally just taken an hour to practice British accents. And mind you, again, remember, I'm from Austria. I was not born speaking English. So if there's mistakes, please excuse me. Have a good laugh about it. That's the whole reason that I'm doing this, okay? The title of this article is Lady Bradshawton Society Papers. Austria's real-life Bridgerton season. A modern-day debutante reflects on the opera ball, blue blood, Catholic ritual, and why Austria still has the season. Dearest gentle reader, as the chandeliers of the opera ball cast prisms on gilded stucco and recently acquired diamond rings, I, an Austrian exile, am prevailed to remember the whisper of gowns and the tipping of heels on mirroring parquet floors in an ever-ebbing waltz upon the Danube. There shall be nothing simply more thrilling in a young Austrian debutante's mind than the thought of an eligible dance partner, no matter the shortage of agreeable candidates. When this author stood enveloped in white, rose in hand, and crowned with a tiara, she had considered it a rite of passage in maturation granted to every girl. One was yet to discover the vastness of the world and the glamour of its cultures. And thus, from afar, yet there in spirit, this author was recently overcome with a sweeping nostalgia upon observing the newest visual indulgences of Bridgerton Season 4. Having been born in the midst of the carnival season in Austria, around the seasonal pinnacle of dance festivities, the opera ball in Vienna, amongst, I guess, surely other pinnacles, one was caught in the storm of familiarity and wonder. Yet, my company for the evening inspired the most shocking discovery. There seem to be individuals residing behind illuminated screens who might be inclined to believe that Bridgerton balls, the season, and the ton are but fairy tales, mere shadows of a time long gone. Because this author finds herself at a lack of ballrooms and violins amidst the South Taiwanese sun, which surely would find joy in burning the skin left exposed by a Regency-era Empire-style dress, I shall allow for an intimate insight into the land where ballrooms are still frequented. A place where castles are not merely left as empty shells for touristic promenading, nepotism still sweeps the floors, and history has seemingly not yet drawn its last rustling breath. If the dearest gentle reader is not inclined to believe that such a thing as a ball season may still be happening in this present moment, in true fashion of Lady Whistledown herself, I shall deliver two pieces of evidence. First, a video of the opening of the year's largest ball of the season, not in Mayfair, but in the heart of Vienna, the Opera Ball. And secondly, a relic from the very ball that this author was a debutante in, examining the truth behind the pinnacle of this season. There are, in fact, differences that this author must specify regarding how Bridgerton paints the ball season and how it is indeed conducted in the modern city of Vienna, built upon ancient stones and waltzing bones. Immediately, it might be apparent to the onlooker that the gowns of the debutantes in the videos provided are far less luxurious and notoriously white The reasons for this can be found in Catholic traditional color theory, where white presents purity, however much one or the individual debutante might disagree with that, and thus white is only worn on two occasions: for the debutante ball and for one's very own wedding. The specialty of the debutante ball is that one is also entitled to wearing a tiara, which in the case of the opera ball, showcased above, is designed by none other than the famous house of Swarovski, which is native to Austria. While highly regarded balls feature additional performances such as the ballets or singers, the typical debutante ball around one's graduation, called matura, lent from the Latin word to be mature, for every Austrian girl features first a polonaise, which is a synchronized dance in the fashion of Pride and Prejudice or Bridgerton, and the highlight of the evening, the waltz. Of course, a Viennese waltz. The opening of a ball might last anywhere up to an hour, a time during which speeches and thanks are given and the polonaise is danced. In opposition to Bridgerton, these polonaises are one only performed by the debutantes themselves, because modern-day audiences are not accustomed to such intricate choreographies. The magic of the evening is, as is most fitting, the moment of the first waltz. It is certainly not by coincidence that the Viennese waltz is the jewel prized in Austrian culture, not only because some of the most important composers of waltz music, like Johann Strauss, resided in Vienna. As one might expect, the requirements for this ritual are quite strictly orchestrated, and more mature adults in Austria will know the steps to a waltz. First, the debutantes are grouped into rings, and the most skilled are chosen in the middle, as they will form the focal point. For lower tier balls, it is sufficient to dance the right-turning Viennese waltz, but if selected into the inner circles of a higher class ball, one must dance the harder left-turning waltz in order to create the illusion of black and white swirling rings twisted into one another. This author is smitten enough to admit to having been selected for the inner circle, though at a lower tier ball. As the modern equivalent of a mere maid, such was already a great honour. And then, the debutantes waltz to the song that greets every new year in Austria and is lacing inside of each of our local minds. The Donauwalzer, or also An der schönen blauen Donau, at the beautiful blue Danube, is truly a marvellous jewel of music, yet most Austrians joke that our Danube is actually rarely blue. A fact which I can agree to, having grown up on the shores of this marvellous river. The song admits the debutantes to waltz the floor first, before a short pause. It is this precise moment that the audience and everyone is holding their breath for. As the conductor climbs her steps, she exclaims the infamous words, "Alles Walzer," everyone waltz. And the room bursts into dance and joy and whimsy. In fact, it is this joy that our president, who is asked to speak at every opera ball, gives utmost importance to in the turbulent times that we live in. In this short interview, he reminded the public to be aware of the utmost importance of peace, that seemingly small nations like Austria, united in the European Union, are now more than ever called to serve as peacekeepers. He named the ball as just the kind of event to keep the peace. Many international diplomats and important decision makers like to crowd the parquet, and thus he demands to just have traditional Austrian joy, a word called Gaude, used in Austria today with its roots in the Latin word gaudete, or to rejoice. It lacks a proper English definition, but in his words, the embrace in dance was maybe more important than ever. The gossip amongst the modern ton. This author can report that one of the many similarities between the modern season in Vienna and the Bridgerton seasons would be the broad array of gossip. Such occasions of mingling, dance, and bodily vicinity have in the past and will certainly in the future present an opportunity for chemistry. I can report that several intensifying kisses were exchanged at my debutante ball, and while Bridgerton might take matters further than reality does, I believe it is best we keep it that way. In regards to the Austrian ton, the following shall be said. Austria has no king or queen at present, and nobility has been forced to resign their titles after the end of the First World War. However, blood is thicker than water, and blue blood is like a secret web embedded in the Austrian society. Those living in castles in Austria today, because these pearl-like buildings still dot the countryside like silent sighs of the past, share the blood of those who laid the first stones hundreds of years ago, for the most part. Yet they are rarely visible in the public. Only in events such as these do their names suddenly appear amongst those granted the opportunity to open for the most influential of balls. It is such occasions that the modern ton silently uses to keep engaging with one another. While they are considered part of the regular Austrian society, there is often still a sheer veil of blue blood, an air of nepotism, and that uncanny feeling amongst us, the mere mortals, that positions seem to flock among those with certain names. But it is a wound we seldom dare to scratch, as the Austrian lifestyle is one to gloss over the ugly, especially when one is not eager to discover how deep familial ties still reach. It is regarded with a smirk. The Habsburg family is glanced upon as a diamond left on our shelf that tourists are eager to invest in, and the dark-humoured banter of the dressing room has always been a great rival to the official discussion held on the ballroom. Because if one thing is for certain, then it is that in every Austrian lies the seed for a cunning Lady Whistledown. The history of the season. But where did the shimmer start? Why, despite rising inclusivity, does Austria seem stuck in a ritual most would regard as dead? It is because we Austrians regard our past with the glittering eyes of a lover and the icy stare of a divorcee at the same time. Trust the Austrian history detailed tales of beauty and horror. In such vicinity, one is left with no other mechanism but to ensure to always remember the past, while applying a healthy dose of sarcasm to real life, so as to not land in the hands of Freud himself, who, by the way, was an Austrian Viennese citizen. Originally, and this again diverts from the canon of Bridgerton, where the ton mingles in Mayfair in the spring and summer season, the Austrian ball season was predicted by none other than the Catholic Church. The Habsburg Empire was renowned for its pious attitudes and a far-stretching land that yet had to gather its own ton in the vicinity of Vienna every year for discussive meetings. It was the time of intermarriage and incest, granting us with protruding chins, infamous noses, and the everlasting Latin words, Bella garant alii, tu felix Austria nube. Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry. Most royals in Austria had to tend to their countryside estates in the spring and summer, where agriculture and trade drove their financial resources. It was only in the autumn time that the ton would return to the city palais in the first district of Vienna to prepare for the ever-growing cold and mist in the city and for the first days of the ball season. The 11th of November, St. Martin's Day, used to be the mark of beginning of the season. It is still celebrated lavishly in modern-day Austria by eating geese, performing lantern parades, and handing oversized keys to local mayors as a symbolic act of opening the carnival season. It might pique the interest of the reader to know that, yes, masquerades were actually part of the ball season in Vienna, as the name carnival season might suggest. And finally, we're going to dig into the origins of the masquerade. The Habsburg Empire inherited the idea of the masquerade from Venice, which it had occupied as part of an expansion into northern Italy. However, in order for the balls to become like those perceived in Bridgerton, the Habsburg Empire strategically extinguished the original meaning. Masquerade was first introduced in Venice in the 13th century and was an opportunity to completely veil one's identity and mingle among all other citizens of the city, no matter their standing in social hierarchy. During Carnival, masks allowed anonymity and social freedom, regardless of class. The Habsburg monarchs seemed to not take great interest in commoners moving into the ballroom, which is why they quickly turned the tradition into more slightly masqueraded dance parties, much akin to the ones in Bridgerton. The Habsburgs took control of Venice in 1797 and later banned the masquerade balls, seeing them as a potential political risk. I guess this author must thus officially apologize to Sophie, because these changes made by the Austrian Empire to the masquerade originating from Venice are what causes her utter distress on so many screens at the moment. A fact Bridgerton fails to mention is that the ball season ends on the last Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, which is when the fasting season begins until Easter. It seems that the writers of the series were far too invested in intimate bodily contact and nocturnal recreation to consider the looming ancient voice of the church. Thus, it is actually correct that there were, and still are, masquerades, much like in Bridgerton. However, not necessarily at the beginning of the season. Furthermore, the style of dress might have been slightly different, especially considering the freezing temperatures of the Austrian winter. Besides this, Bridgerton does replicate the seasonality of Regency lifestyles, only that the Austrian aristocracy used their winters from November to February for their ball season, the spring for Lent, and the late spring and summer to escape to the countryside. And then in the autumn, they would harvest and make a return to the city to plan the next season. And with having settled these scores, both with Bridgerton and the reader, this author resigns to her small bedchamber in Taiwan, where no waltz could ever reasonably be danced. Thus, this author will find pleasure in a less spacious salsa, far from the wooden panelling one was born to inhabit, though this author will admit that possibly the revealing moments of the Latin dance might be more akin to the plot of Bridgerton than the controlled waltz, after all. And that is where I get to be me again. This is insane. I have been doing some practicing in this voice before to try to be acting in it. I really tried to make this voice acting, but it's probably so embarrassing and I'm so apologetic. I really, really deeply apologize. This was probably really, really, really fucking cringe for you guys to get through, and just imagine how cringe it was for me. If you want to read the whole thing without having to hear me, because it is genuinely embarrassing, click the link below, click at the Medium article, and you can read the article yourself, or you can have it be read to you by an AI voice. If I'm being honest, I learned so much through this article. I did learn a lot of the history of the ball season, because I was aware of how the ball season works in Austria right now, but I wasn't aware of the origins of the masquerade ball, so I learned something in the process of writing, and that's basically my whole goal with this, is for me to keep learning. I hope you had some fun. I hope you learned something. Because seriously, there's so much to discover around Bridgerton. I can't wait for the second part to come out. For some reason, I wasn't really a big fan of season 3. I was way more into Eloise, I think. And then I feel like they've turned it around for season 4. I'm not the only one to say this, though. I've heard a couple people online be like, wait, are they low-key saving the whole idea of Bridgerton? Because season 3 was kind of like, but season 4 is back and it's amazing. I'm so looking forward to season 5 because it's supposed to be about Eloise, and I feel like That's what the internet is holding its breath for. That's all I will say about Bridgerton today. I hope you have a nice time watching it on Netflix. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for granting me access to your ears here on the Mugcast. You can read more of my writing on Medium under Hannah's Cafe or Hug in a Mug, or you can follow me on Instagram at hugin.amug for cozy content and updates. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with a fellow coffee lover, and let me know in the comments which article I should read next. I hope you had a nice cappuccino with this episode, and I'm sending a warm hug from my mug to yours. Hope to see you soon somewhere on Hannah's Cafe.